Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cleveland Heights Public Safety and Health Committee of City Council. Abby, would you call the roll?
Posh.
Here.
Larson. Here. Cobb.
Here. So here we are. We have an agenda, which really starts with really trying to figure out what our role is. And I've sent a note to our mayor on 7/16, asking for some questions and how we can work collaboratively together to address some things that we had discussed in our last meeting, and maybe some things that we might be able to help the administration implement and to get more ideas. And I sent a follow-up email asking for some support and direction, and I have not received anything. So I think it's hard for us to collaborate with his office at this point. And since I'm new at council, I know that this happened with other committees in the past. So before we start going down through this list, do you guys have any advice for me on how we can continue? Because clearly these are things like, what is our protocol if someone, let's say, would ask like for a traffic table? I mean, we're not gonna legislate that, obviously. There's the Mayor's Action Center. There's things regarding data on areas that may be dangerous or not dangerous. And I know that there's staff members working on that under multiple initiatives that it would be helpful to get keyed in on.
Well, I could tell you that on my weekly meetings with the mayor on Tuesdays, I had that on the agenda, which I sent to him a couple of days ago. He wasn't able to make the meeting today. I did come to the meeting and I didn't find out until about 15 minutes into the meeting he couldn't make it. But I can tell you I'll keep it on the agenda. The item was responsiveness to council people. So just so you know, next Tuesday I'll bring it up again. If we meet, I'll make sure that I try to urge the collaboration you're talking about.
So you have a standing meeting every week?
Every Tuesday at noon. So I had it on the agenda for today. The specific, your specific emails and actually Gail's too as well.
You've mentioned to me that those get canceled more often than not. Is that still the case?
The last couple months, there have been a lot of cancellations.
I might add that working through what we've had to work through, I have gotten the best technique for building an agenda in our committee meetings is asking a director to come. That's who I sent it to on the top line of the email, and then with a CC to the mayor. And I also CC Councilor Kuda, President Kuda, and Addie. I usually get responses from the director. So, suggesting a date, are they available? And these are the topics I'd like to talk about. And it's worked for me the last few months.
Okay.
So.
I think there's somebody in the police department that's specifically assigned to street safety too. So maybe ask the chiefs if that particular person, if that, I know that was one of the topics. But maybe just the chief, I don't know if he needs to bring another person, but it's just an idea of somebody who specializes in that particular.
So why don't we just chunk these out? I mean, this memo that I wrote to the mayor is really kind of broken out in some sections. And the top part is the Safe Streets piece, which talks about safe streets for CH, and also the Heights Regional Active Transportation Plan that some of us have actually gone to the most recent open house, and we were able to learn a little bit more about that. But these things actually require funding they're plans, they're necessarily studies, there aren't necessarily implementable things that happen overnight. So the Safe Streets looks like it's an initiative out of the planning department. So I guess what I'd like to do is, carve that one out. I can reach out to the planning director and ask him to attend our next meeting, and we can talk about these particular items. And I'll use your approach, Gail.
Yeah.
Can we just go back on your comment about, I think it's important that we, our conduit to know what goes on with the city seems to go through these meetings that you and Vice President DeVita have. And when they don't occur, it really puts us at a huge, huge disadvantage. I mean, we could be a month behind. I mean, if this is a priority, getting all this stuff done, we're a month behind now. And, in the business world, time is money, but we can never get that time back, especially if it's a safety issue. If someone dies in a crosswalk because we could have done something 30 days sooner, we've got that over our heads.
I mean,
This is no way critical. But I know it's come up in other conversations that we've had. I'm just afraid we're not getting the access that we need from our council leaders, working with the administration.
I mean, the other option, and certainly I could put this in an email, is because I send the agenda every week, usually about 48 hours ahead. Sorry. Is just, ask for something in writing, at least some written responses. It's not as good as a discussion because the follow-up and so forth, but I can do that. So I'll try to follow up. When I get home tonight, I'll just resend the agenda and I'll ask the mayor to answer these questions via email. At least we'll have something, and I'll share them with the rest of council, including your question about the collaboration with the mayor and administrators on, these issues that you have here.
So the lead safe status, Gail, these were mostly your questions.
Yeah.
I added a couple just to help clarify for me and for other members of the public that may be looking at this. I was not at the recent lead, the events that they had regarding. Do we know if any council members went to that?
I did not.
I wasn't able.
I think, again, if you want to approach it by reaching out to the most appropriate people, Zach Ravenelli is the lead safe commissioner. That's the job he does, responding to all the different things that go on with the lead safe, because it can be a private citizen that needs help because their child was diagnosed with lead poisoning. He also has worked with the contractors who are out there doing the testing of the units. I think now his boss is probably Alan Butler or Eric Zanft. Housing.
I see where you're going with this. I don't know the reporting order. Administrator Williams might know.
Zach Ravenelli's boss would be Alan Butler.
I don't know that reporting relationship. Yeah.
So I guess for certain I'd send it to, with direct and assistant director Butler and also to Zach Ravenelli on the first line and ask if either one of them would be available at your next meeting to answer these questions, or if they're not available, as Councilor Kuda said, can we get answers to these questions? in writing.
I would copy Eric Zant just because he's, all that is under planning and obviously the mayor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned to me, a former realtor, who was on the phone with a Cleveland Heights former realtor. She had thought that the mayor's office had taken over the Let's Save program. Do we hear about that? Or is it still? I mean, it's all rumor.
In the legislation, he was charged with appointing members to the Lead Safe Advisory Board. So that is now on his portal for people to apply. That board has never met. So perhaps that's where that rumor came from. But in the long term of things, he is in charge of everybody, so it would behoove you to CC him as well as Director Zant probably.
So people have reached out to me a number of times regarding deer. Is that something that, based on the council structure, who would take that on as far as committees go? Would that be a safety committee?
Or municipal service.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There were 2 years ago, a recommendation came out of municipal services via the transportation environmental sustainability committee. A recommendation for minimally paying at the time was $1,700 for deer and inventory of the deer that are in our city. I brought it up and the mayor said that at that time he was not interested in pursuing anything regarding deer management. And that's where it sits.
I can tell you that in 2022, during the budget process, I brought up the idea of having a consortium of animal control with our surrounding suburbs. And, because it just seemed to me that it didn't go anywhere, obviously, that. But the idea was that because the animals just, obviously don't see those boundaries or anything, and even doing something here might not really be that impactful if our neighbors aren't participating in it. And it's expensive probably to do animal control if just one suburb is doing it. I was just thinking, with a cost sharing thing, it might be something we might be able to afford. It would be bigger, like, if you just look at the contiguous suburbs, it might be a big enterprise, but it might be worth it. I know somebody showed up at a meeting last week and they had a deer tick in a file. They pulled it off of themselves and put it in a file and it was still alive. And they're like, this is the second time I've had to do this. And that's where it gets into the health part of it. Because those Lyme disease, my uncle died of that. I mean, it eventually got him. He lived with it for a long time. It's pretty nasty.
I had a picture from a resident that someone forwarded to me yesterday about a deer on someone's porch.
Wow.
You want to say something? You want to have a seat?
Sure.
You are a council member, right?
So, two things. One is that South Euclid is doing a sterilization pilot. And my understanding, could be mistaken, but my understanding is that the mayor is interested in waiting and seeing the results from that. It's also my understanding, based on a conversation with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, that could take 4, 5, 6 years before we get meaningful data to know whether that was effective. Also, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has a map that shows you what each community is doing for its deer management. And so I could take a look for that and share that with you. It's very helpful to see what some of our neighbors are doing. Yeah.
And I see those deer in Cleveland Heights because they got the South Euclid tag on.
There was a seminar they offered that called out, wanted to have all the suburbs, the first string suburbs come in for this seminar. I missed it, but they noted on their invitation that Cleveland Heights and University Heights are the only two cities without some kind of deer management program. So I really wanted to go to that, it was just like, didn't work out. But there's educational opportunities too, that if I get them, I can pass them on to you. Something like those, that comes up again.
Well, I just wanna make sure if you look at committee jurisdiction, I wanna make sure that, you know, this is sitting in the right community, or
Yeah.
the right committee. I mean, and, you know, if the municipal services committee, which you and I are both a part of,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure it really matters. I don't think we're stepping on each other's toes. But it certainly seems to me, before you really talk about any kind of problem, you need to really understand how big the problem is. And if a recommendation had come down at one point to do, you know, some kind of inventory, you know, the question is, what can we do to force that? Or highly encourage it, or get it done? Because with that, I think we have a much better idea of what the issue is. I mean, I don't think any of us wanna go around calling deer, nor do we wanna advocate for that. But if we're at a point where there's just way too many, you know, what are we gonna do?
Laura,
Yeah, I'd be happy to seek out my archives and see if I can't find that recommendation and send that on to you. I was quite thorough.
do you remember Laura, I'm sorry, forgetting your last
Marks,
but Laura Marks, she cited a study about Cleveland Heights that said how many deer we're gonna have, and do you remember that one? It was like in 10 years or something. She's a really good resource.
I'm meeting with her for 30 minutes tomorrow,
Oh, perfect.
actually,
Tell her to bring her,
on an unrelated.
well, if you could, just ask her to bring that info with her. She had it at some meeting maybe a year or so ago, a couple of years it might have been.
So help me just walk through the process. I'm kind of interested in just knowing what the number is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it would be nice to be able to compare that against what's happening in other cities, especially cities that we do know that are culling deer. Like I believe Shaker and Beechwood have a combined agreement. But I don't know that for sure. What are our options as a council committee to make a recommendation or push for, legislate this type of activity to get a survey done?
I mean, obviously we could fund it, but, you know, I don't know if we could compel the administration to do it. But one good thing is, you know, the mayor's gonna be asking us in August or September, what our recommendations are. And, you know, if you think it's important, you know, let's sell it and see if, you know, he buys into it. That's kind of the time to get that moving.
But doesn't this work like, you sit around a table and all the recommendations get dumped in the middle of the table and you're all collaborating and picking and choosing what needs to get funded and done?
At the end of the day, we decide, you know, what gets funded. So, you know,
I'm wondering if a public hearing would be valid at this point to find out what the community's concerns are, because we all get the emails about this topic especially. So it's something for you to consider as chair of the committee.
How do we manage that? do we have space? Do we do it at a community center? Who supports that? Is that something that our clerk helps us do? How do we get
Most likely she helps us do the one I held the first year on the Let's Safe, we did it in council chambers, so wouldn't expect you to need to have a really huge room, but it worked very well, cause then you have the mics and you have the public, you got the recording all set up. You don't have to bring staff over to the community center.
And how does the participation get promoted?
Well,
No, you could do public, like it's, you know, just a regular public hearing that you can put out an agenda for. You could put it in the newsletter. You spread the word by word of mouth, obviously.
So not trying to do like a knee-jerk reaction, just hearing this without really thinking through it too much, but I mean, is that something that this body would be interested in doing?
I think it's worthy of having a public hearing. I don't need to have a study to know that the deer population in this city is grown exponentially in the last 25 years that I've lived here. And that's probably one of the most reoccurring complaints that I get is why aren't we doing anything about the deer? And I fear that it's going to take someone being run off the road on one of our main streets in a serious car accident before we do anything about it. But as President Kuda indicated, I think at this time, all we can do is fund it. But I certainly think that to have a public hearing on it will bring some awareness to it. And, maybe convince the administration that it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And with these mild winters that we are having, it is only getting worse.
You might want to get somebody from the County Board of Health.
I was just about to say, there was someone that came in to speak for one of my training sessions, my one-day training sessions. I can see if I can find his name. He was really good. The other thing, couple things. Shaker and Beechwood do partner. They have a culling program that they use Precision Wildlife for. Maybe you could potentially have someone from them come in to talk about it, because I know culling is not something that everyone agrees with, but maybe it would be something that you could have them come into the public hearing so people could actually hear about it. And the other thing, on a personal note, I almost got hit by a deer on a motorcycle, so that was fun. Not.
The deer was on a motorcycle.
Yeah, the deer was on the motorcycle. Yeah. No, that was definitely very scary. It was at night, and
An interesting thing happened last year. Somebody called me and a deer dropped dead in their backyard.
remember that.
And they couldn't haul it they called the city, and the city said, if you can drag the deer to the tree lawn, we'll get rid of it. Well, this person, I don't know, was gonna do that. It's like 300 pounds or something. And I called the County Board of Health, and I just said, and this is probably a little bit of a white lie, I said, I think the deer had ticks on it and stuff, so they don't want to move it, just to see if they come out for health reasons. And they said they don't do that. As a matter of fact, they said something really odd. They said they don't service Cleveland Heights anymore. That's what they said. And I was like,
that's the reaction I've gotten to when I followed up with some skunks.
And
no, that was real curious. But that's what they said. We no longer, as of, and it was some month, I don't remember what month.
well, I don't think the county comes and does removal at all anymore. Beechwood uses A1 Wildlife to do
Yeah, maybe they don't do it for anybody, I don't know.
Well, at one point we had our own animal warden. And it goes
Long
back
time
a
ago.
long time ago. And when I believe the retirement happened, they contracted that with the county, I believe. And so then maybe the county just doesn't do it for anybody anymore. So do we know if we have any internal resources that do that work as an animal warden, or there's
I think the police will move a deer if it's blocking, like a dead animal, if it's blocking like a street or something.
what about a rabid animal going berserk or a Rottweiler. Not that I wanna knock on a Rottweiler, some of them are very, very cute, but let's say a wild dog that's going nuts.
What about coyotes that we have, cause we've got a lot of those.
We have them on our street, coyotes, because we have a ravine.
Okay, so I like the idea of the public hearing. I'm gonna come back with you next month with an option. That seems like an interesting idea for even other things that we may need to build some community support to get accomplished. I'm gonna move on to the next item, which is the Racial Justice Task Force Safety Recommendations. I spent a lot of time working with the members of that committee, and I think as we mentioned at one other time, there's a feeling of disappointment that they spent all this time working as a committee and they don't feel like there's any action coming down with any of their work. They have called out initiatives that, some initiative, maybe it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I mean, just to give credit where credit is due, there's certain specific items regarding the police department that they are thrilled that are getting deployed. And I don't know if they were direct recommendations from the committee or they included in their list of things that they wanted to continue. But the bi-monthly meet and greet that our police officers hold, I actually met with one of the officers at one of our residents' houses in an afternoon, sort of like neighborhood get together, sort of to meet the police, and I was incredibly impressed. Listening to the officers, there was two officers that had, in addition to, say, a trainer, they're part of the police academy, but I was just incredibly impressed with the two recruits that had graduated and are now on our force. I met with one of the other members where they really thought that they were working with sort of a theme of transparency and trust. And they were looking at anything that can be done with our police and residents just to build that level of transparency and trust, like having an ombudsman. So if you do file a complaint, people listen to it. And I think we're on our way there. One of the questions I had for our police department is, what are the other things that are going on that are sort of that I get a sense that are happening, but I don't have any tangible examples. But what are out there that we can promote and look at and basically tick off as, these are things that the Racial Justice Task Force recommended that we are doing in that regard. They put together this survey, and I have the link. It was my impression that the Racial Justice Task Force was working with components of the administration, and I get the sense when the recommendation was coming out, it's not like they may have had blessing from the administration to have some of this work done, but it was worked, they were included in the process. So one of the things is this survey. Can we get this survey out? I'm on my fourth bullet here. But that's not something, is that something you think council can do? Can we ask the police department to do it? I think as a courtesy, one of the reasons I wanted to discuss this with the mayor or, have one of his representatives here to discuss it. Is this something that would be appropriate or not based on their work plan and other things that are going on?
I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to look at the survey, Jim, but Councilor Pash, I do think you'd have to work really closely with the mayor and the police department on that one. To vet the questions for one thing, to to make sure that you get the kind of response that you will be helpful. I ask all the time during budget time if they've got the e-citation hardware and software in their patrol cars, and even of last year, not all of them have them, but that's supposed to give us data that was going to help with when that information came out about profiling, that suggested there might be profiling going on. The data was supposed to help us confirm or discount it. And so I don't know what kind of data they're collecting, if they've got all the patrol cars have it now or not. But I do think the survey would require working closely with administration. But it doesn't sound like a bad idea. And have you met Robert Lampley yet? He was the chair.
Yes.
Okay,
So I sat down with him and actually came up with this list of items,
Great.
and he was, I'd say the third and the fourth bullet were really key to him.
great.
Really wanted the survey.
Yeah.
And this whole mode of being transparent and trust and hammer that into basically, all sides of this issue. Does anybody have any additional feelings on this?
Well, and as an alternative, and I hope things go well with, the collaboration. But, you could always run this by Sarah Wolf from Future Heights, and she's very good at both creating surveys and distributing them and getting data. And she may have, I'm just saying as a resource, she may have some ideas
She's the one that does the crowd.
Yes.
crowdsourced. She's particularly good at this kind of thing.
My big takeaway on this is how we treat our citizens committees and what we do as a city and how we prop them up and how we give them these assets, and we spend, a fair amount of time, no more than that, an incredible amount of time, and they spend an incredible amount of time coming up with very thoughtful things, and then they sit on the shelf. I know there was a housing committee that happened, and the people feel disenfranchised regarding that.
I can address that at our meeting on the 26th, the Finance Committee meeting, on August 15th. We're gonna talk about possibly having Frank Ford come in, who is in communication with other inner ring suburbs, talk about the banks that are not investing in our neighborhoods and moving that forward. And that was one of the recommendations from the Racial Justice Task Force. So I invited the members of the Housing and Economic Development Committee, subcommittee, to come and speak to that committee meeting. So I'm hoping to start moving further along with the things that they recommended. So they're part of my agenda.
Mr. Housing Committee Chairman person, you were, we had a conversation about your committee taking on the Racial Justice Task Force recommendations, but from the housing angle.
Yeah, President Kuda asked if we could take a look at those in committee. So I talked with the staff members to learn if they had a preference for how we would bring those up. Director Zanf suggested that we maybe look at one or two each month, beginning in August. So in initially looking over them, we realized there are some recommendations that we might be able to accomplish without legislation. So for example, they recommended that we provide notice when citing people for housing violations that they may be eligible for support programs. And that's something that Director Zanf explained that they could just do within their office without needing to write up legislation for. So he is evaluating the recommendations and is going to decide in what order they want to have them discussed in our committee. So the first one is going to be discussed at the August meeting with the intention of one or two every month thereafter. And that was just from the housing related recommendations from the task force.
So what I'm gonna do, just trying to take that tack, is reach out to the chief and see if there's an opportunity to discuss these items with him and his staff. Let me move on to the kind of these last bullet points. I mean, regrettably, these are issues that I really felt like we needed to work with a representative, and they came up in our last meeting, and the mayor mentioned that he would discuss them. Which is why I am disappointed that we can't go through them. President Kudo, would you, I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna email you and I'm gonna bullet these things, and when you reach out to the mayor next, would you, on behalf of council, if you would ask him to look at these for us?
Sure.
So the next item is this Lee Road incident, and this is something I saw with my own two eyes. A 16-year-old boy was struck on a crosswalk around 7:30 in the morning. Fortunately, he was fine. Fortunately, there was an ER doctor getting her coffee at the Stone Oven, which most of you know that's where I usually spend my mornings for an hour or two as I get my work done. It was pretty horrific. It was a hit and run driver. Did not stop. I think if the boy, who was one of our residents, was stepped out a fraction of a second sooner, he would have been hit. I had a series of questions, a series of suggestions. I reached out to Chief Britton, Director Klingsdale, and Director Zamf, CC'd the mayor and Tony, and nobody got back to me on this. Which I thought was pretty disrespectful. Be as it may.
If I may, if I remember correctly, you mentioned the other email you followed up with folks. Did you also send a follow-up on this one?
I did not in this one. It was actually something,
Is there a meeting being?
This one?
Okay. I can't find it.
I didn't think it was my place to badger any of our directors.
You said that they did catch the driver?
I have no idea.
I think somebody told me,
I heard that they did catch the
Oh.
driver.
like they used the cameras or something, right? Like the,
That's what I believe is the flock cameras, but I don't know what the source of my info was,
Okay.
that they were caught, but that's what I was told. It might have come from the mother of the child, who was doing fine. He had a concussion and some staples in his head.
That's great. But not the staples, but doing fine.
Doing all things considered, yes, very lucky.
It was heartbreaking seeing her show up, not knowing what was going on. And the Good Samaritans there, that called her.
and I heard the police response was very quick.
The police response was just dynamite. They acted incredibly professionally. They were fast. EMS was there fast. You know, we had blocked the road off. Every driver was very considerate and moved on a side street to get away from everything. And I mean, the biggest, I mean, if you call her a hero, would be the ER doctor that was, you know, in the road, holding on to the boy and talking him through and just calming him down. But our safety forces were wonderful. I mean, it was a very proud moment. So as council members that have more experience in this than me, when things like this happen, do you ever get notified? Something like this?
I'm sorry, notified of what?
If there's an incident, has there ever been any protocol where a council member gets notified or council members get notified if there's any?
I never recall being notified about an incident, but I, on my own, will look through a Twitter account that posts things that are overheard on the police scanner. So that's how I hear about most unfortunate incidents like this. But I never recall the administration sharing, info about recent events.
Well, it seems to me that the first step to try to feel out the situation, I mean, part of this is trying to figure out roles, who's responsible, who can take ownership, who can be supportive, who can help. Or just say, you're just out of the picture. You have nothing to do with this. I mean, what was sort of apropos with this is we've been talking about Lee Road safety and we just okayed the DORA plan. And it was, and we knew that we know that there was 2 deaths on Lee Road regarding pedestrians last year. And we know that there's traffic calming already in place. Maybe not enough traffic calming, but there's an awful lot of traffic calming in place. I mean, when do you stop? I mean, when do you keep on throwing more into the equation? I remember one of the things that I believe you mentioned, Jim, in one of our public meetings was the maybe we need some traffic tables there.
At the August 26th municipal services meeting, Director Klingscale will be talking to us about the traffic studies. They were conducted citywide. And I believe we'll hear data. I'm interested in what the plan is for Lee Road. How do you, and like you say, we have a baseline. How do you monitor how effective those bollards are, the bollards that are on there right now? Those kinds of things we can ask her at that point. And how did they decide that Caledonia, Windsor, and one more street intersection justified a traffic circle, which is a great idea. But I wanna know how they're making their decisions about which streets get the attention and how you follow up with that. Like, it's supposed to be a temporary traffic circle in 6 months. Will you let council know how it went? What's your data show? Did the incidence of accidents go down? So it's those kind of questions and that's on the streets that people have asked me about as priorities for traffic study and what the result is. I hope to have that discussion out in the open on the 26th.
See, that's a really great example. For example, someone could initially interpret those thoughts as, are you second guessing the administration?
Sure.
But that's not really what's going on. I mean, the issue here is, you're learning about it so you can promote it, so you can be part of the solution, how you can fund it in the future, how you can see other areas in the community, because we get out in other areas of the community and talk and make sure people understand what's actually going on. Because this is more of a temporary traffic table. It's essentially paint and some barricades.
Am I remembering correctly last year, Gil, that there was someone who came into your committee meeting with drawings? It was after the pedestrian was killed, right at Delwood and.
That may have been
right
Gail
by the-
Lewin.
There was some really good drawings.
Yeah.
With ideas for either, I think there was either a divider, like an actual physical concrete divider, or the raised crosswalk.
You know, this is actually kind of going into our, I think the last named item, which is the traffic study inquiry that you brought to our attention, Gail, in an email, about whether there would be some overlap with the municipal services committee.
Which is okay. It's okay,
I agree, it's okay.
we're stronger. That we approach it with different aspects, but with the same ultimate goal, right?
So I'm just gonna just talk about traffic studies and just data, just bring maybe one new piece here, and it's actually sort of mentioned in one of the, how we work together. But I've recently had a lot of communication from residents that seem to think that we're not enforcing as hard as we used to enforce in the city when it comes to, you know, speeding and I guess things like that. Is it appropriate to ask for some data? I mean, how many speeding tickets we give out?
The data on the traffic tickets, and I think I shared this with at least Councilmember Petrus, is made available by the judge every year in his annual report. And I can tell you that traffic citations are down more than 50% from where they were previously. And that includes citations for DWI.
So does that mean we have better drivers?
No, I mean, Cleveland Heights used to have a reputation that you didn't speed in this city, you didn't violate traffic laws. That reputation is gone, and there are people that disagree with me when I say this. The best traffic calming device is a police officer issuing you a citation and a stiff fine. And I know we've had some manpower challenges that have hampered our ability to write tickets. It's my hope that at the next budget hearings, and I believe we provided all of the funding. In fact, we provided more funding to the police department than the mayor had asked for last year, that we provide whatever funding is necessary to make sure that we have a full complement to have our traffic bureau reinstated, and that we insist that citations start getting issued to the people that are speeding in the city. It's and if there's no fear of getting a ticket, people are going to break the speed laws. And I guarantee you that if you spent a couple of weeks doing diligent enforcement on Lee Road, people would get the message on that street to slow down. We dropped the speed limit. Do we see anyone that's going any slower on Lee Road because we did, or on Euclid Heights Boulevard? No.
I think those are wise words.
So the data is there that shows that we're not writing nearly as many traffic citations as we used to.
I mean, just in a general sense, I think I've said to all of you that I think oversight is an essential part of each committee. And both the oversight and just updates on initiatives and so forth, you know, how's it going kind of questions, and calling, you know, the appropriate directors to, you know, with a notice, you know, several days notice, that these are the questions we're going to be asking so that they can come prepared with the information you need. But I always look favorably on that role. I think it's a very important role that we play, and perhaps a little underutilized.
Well, and also at budget time,
Even more.
council added $200,000 to traffic calming so that we funded that particular initiative. So we did that through our ability to look at what the funds were that were available to the city to use, and we expressed that by that funding that traffic calming is important. So that's gonna be a question that we'll be asking in the finance department committee meetings is, have you utilized the money that we awarded, that we allocated for traffic calming? So the budget becomes a tool for those kinds of things to follow up on.
What do you guys think about robocops? And what I mean by that is the boxes that sit on the side of the road with a camera and they, from a city perspective as opposed to a driver
The
perspective.
Newburghs, I'm pretty used to those.
They have them in Newburgh?
Oh,
Do they?
do they?
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't remember the last time I
They
was
have
in Newburgh.
Mudley Road.
They certainly got a lot of people that way.
I think it's gonna be a tough sell in
Yeah.
this city. They issue civil fines. I think for the more effective, requires an officer to actually man the camera or visualize it, and those can result in criminal traffic citations.
What can we do? I mean, maybe this is a question for the chief, but there's always a lot of anxiety when you try to replace a police officer with a camera, and that's not the intent. And I think the intent is also not to entrap people. I think we're trying to find ways of deterring the bad behavior. And, you know, it's always easy to say, you know, they're not our residents that are cutting through our city that are speeding. And that's what I think you'd want to say. I have no data to support that, so I don't know if that's the case or not. I just want people to be driving cautiously down roads like Blue Road. You guys are giving me the impression that those robo cameras not gonna work out.
And there's some restrictions on what you can do. The Ohio legislature, and I don't know all the nuances of that, passed some laws that restrict municipalities from using them.
I get it. Do we have anything else to talk about? Any things we need to discuss in our next meeting?
Could I just ask if anybody remembers the name of the outfit that we hired, the city hired, Safe Streets or Green Streets? They're out of Philadelphia. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. City Administrator Williams, do you know the Safe Streets? It's a consultant that we hired and they're out of Philadelphia. And the guy that heads it up is a former Cleveland Heights resident. I can tell you like stuff about it. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the name. Okay.
Is it the Safe Streets for Cleveland Heights, the national initiative that I know we have a consultant working on?
Anyway, whatever it is, I would suggest that we get some kind of progress report on where that's at. If I could, I'll find out. You know, I'm sure Addie could find out the name of it.
And, oh, sorry.
And as a reminder, I think that it was during the last safety meeting, Director Zam shared that they'll have an update later this year, maybe end of summer, with some immediate improvements that we might be able to fund. So that'll be coming shortly.
Yeah.
Pedestrian, cyclist safety related safety improvements.
And I heard that there's two traffic tables that are going in someplace in the city. At one of maybe the regional active transportation plan, they had some. See, this is the kind of stuff, it'd be nice to know what's going on as opposed to finding out instead of from a press release, especially when you're talking about it. With your leaders, with the leaders who are already present. If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn.
Thank you.
So this meeting is adjourned.